Some good news in the War on Australia Day. An Adelaide Council is planning to vote on a motion to return its Australia Day ceremonies to January 26. Now, this year, the Unley Council, it's in the inner southern suburbs, moved its Citizenship and Citizen of the Year award ceremonies to January 25. Well, the council is now considering backflipping on that after it surveyed the residents. Can you believe the council actually asked the residents what they want? And it found that 60% of them wanted the ceremonies moved back to Australia Day. Isn't it amazing what happens, Freya, when you go and ask real Australians what they think of Australia Day? They're not interested in the woke nonsense. They just want to get on with celebrating their country.
I wish I could have seen the reaction on the face of those council bureaucrats and Greens and Labor councillors when the results came back and 60% were in favour of January 26th. But I think this gets to the deeper point, which is that whatever you think about Australia Day, people do not want the decision to be made by local councils or big corporations. If we are going to change the date, which, I mean, just chatting to, Gen Z, I think that's kind of the direction we're going to end up going in, unfortunately. But if we are going to go down that route, it has to be an intentional national conversation. All sides should be able to debate it. It should be a big conversation that we have, and then we can come to some sort of consensus. But all that's happening now with this council doing that and Woolies doing this is you're just undermining national unity. You're dragging this out as a culture war, and you're not doing anything to magically solve reconciliation. It really achieves nothing. So the best course of action is to have a genuine debate about this. And I don't know, maybe January 26 will win.
Well, there was a rule under the Morrison government, Joe, that if you took your citizenship ceremony away from Australia Day, then you lost your accreditation to hold it.
That's right. I'm not sure if the government going, you will be democratic or we will step in with our fascist boot and ground you into the day.
Come on.
But no, I mean, the most interesting thing about this story is that everything is asked backwards. Like, they implement the policy and then they do the consultation and then they find that, in fact, the policy was that almost 2/3 of residents were opposed to it. Yeah. And this should not be any surprise. Pretty much every survey done about Australia Day shows that around 60% of people, that kind of ballpark figure, want it to stay where it is. And that doesn't mean that they're white supremacists. That doesn't mean that they're racists who don't know anything about the country's history. It's just that January 26 is a pretty good day. People have grown quite attached to it and they would like to just leave things the way they are, which most people, unless something is going horribly wrong, generally want to do. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the difference is that there's a very sizable minority, but a very loud minority that makes people think that this is all inevitable, that then sort of creates this sort of moral panic among local government and state government and politicians generally, and then they go and do something only to find out that it is in fact against what the vast majority want. And so I mean, and then when it comes to Gen Z, it's very interesting. They do now, of course. The interesting thing will be, but what happens when those self-same people grow up? So, in other words, do the Gen Z people who support changing the date now, are they going to continue to support that forever and ever and ever? Or are you always just going to have young people who want to change the system because that's what young people do? And I would remind people, the most radical, left-wing, revolutionary decade in history was probably the 1960s, the sexual revolution, the bra burning, the protests in the streets against Vietnam, fleeing to Canada,
those
the draft
crazy
dodging,
boomers,
burning the American flag, the 1964 Democratic Convention against Mayor Daley, where all of it, hate Ashby and everything. The height of that decade, by a landslide, the United States of America elected Richard Nixon. And they elected him in another landslide, 72, 4 years later in 1972. So again, all the noise doesn't actually mean what people are thinking. And you've got to keep remembering that.
I do love, Claire, though, that this is what councils and governments call consultation. They make a decision, as Joe pointed out before, then realise that the decision is unpopular and then go and ask people what they think of it. They could have just consulted first and got their answer before they did stupid stuff like that.
I think it's just messy. It just feels messy to me that they've changed it and now they're going to change it back. I mean, I think they should change it back. I looked, there was 842 people that replied to this out of a population of 40,000. So that doesn't sound very much, but 60 is the statistics in me somewhere says, actually, that's all right. That's actually not a bad sample size, actually.
I think news polls about 1,300 for the entire country.
The entire country. So 842. It's not bad. I don't know if that's representative. Coming back to Frey's point about Gen Z, I don't know if that's a representative sample who replied. I'd love to know their ages, their genders,
and everything else. It's got to be people that check their mailbox. So it's definitely no one under 40.
It would be people who feel strongly enough about the issue to reply.
Yeah,
so again, you would think that that would, if anything, would favour the change the date people rather than the status.
And then one thing I can tell you about the area is that although it has had a Liberal local member forever and a day, it actually has one of the largest Labor branches in South Australia. Read into that.
That's where Julia Gillard went to high school.
Indeed, she did go to Unley High, but that's a little further down.
I think we need top-down leadership here. I agree. I don't think it should be up to councils to do this. I think we need some unity, at least state or federal, to be able to say this is the date. And at the end of the day, personally, I don't care change the date or not. But the country is just calling out for a day and debate for the rest of the year how evil we are. But can we have a day where we all come together and you know, we've just talked about hundreds of thousands of people who want asylum here, who want to stay here. Can we have one day where we are grateful for this?
Haven't we missed the point that one council has taken a survey of its people? Lots of councils are jumping on Australia Day and moving their citizenship ceremonies. And what are they doing? Nothing. Correct. They're not interested in their people. They're not asking their people. They are making the Greens who happen to run that particular council have simply decided we're giving up on Australia Day. And you're right, it's about 60% of Australians who want it. It's pretty much the same sample that voted 61% against the voice. It's the people who are saying this place is not a mess. We can see what's happening in the rest of the world. It's okay. It really is the case that modern civilisation arrived on the 26th of January. We'll stick to it. It's not a big deal.
Although on the plus side, all those councils, all those councils who did change the date of Australia Day instantly achieved reconciliation.
Exactly
like that. The gap just stuck like that.
It works.
Amazing.
That's exactly how it works. Let's hope a few other councils follow.